So my name is Danielle, and this is our band. It's called Dead Bones Arise, and it came from Ezekiel 37, and it says that there was a valley of dry bones, and once Ezekiel prophesied that they were filled with the Spirit, and then all of the bones that were dead and dry, they stood up a mighty army. And that's like all of us. We're all, lost and with no direction and things like that. And once God fills us with his Spirit, we become a mighty army, and we do things that you wouldn't normally be doing. But anyways, I'm here to tell you guys my story of how God saved me. So I was raised in a Christian home, and my dad was a pastor, actually, and we had a really small church. I grew up in San Diego, and we didn't have a church building, so we met outside in a park. And when it rained, we go to the Boys and Girls Club, and it was really small. And a lot of the guys that came to our church were like cholos and addicts. So when I was younger, we had guys getting clean at our house because all of the sheriffs and all that stuff knew who my dad was. So they would let them get clean, and they would be kicking their addictions at our house. So a lot of people obviously were like, you shouldn't have your kids be seeing that. And I saw they would be throwing up and the sweating, you guys know what I'm talking about. But I'm like 8, 7, and I'm like, looking at them, and it was crazy to see that as a kid. And I remember just we'd be in church on Sunday though, and I would see the sketchiest looking guys with tattoos on their faces and stuff, but during worship, they would be weeping. So I saw my dad had a heart for people like that, and addictions keep you, it's like you keep going, it's like back to the vomit. And you get clean, and you get a job, and your family's doing well, and then it's like just one day something sets you off, and you go back. But I used to see it over and over and over. And I remember this one day I saw this guy, and he was getting clean. And they used to stay in my brother's room, and my brother would stay in my room. We were little enough that we could do that. But he was throwing up really bad in the sheets, and it's like he looked so he could no rest, and I was staring at him because I was really scared. And my dad's like, "Does that look like fun to you?" And I was like, "Heck no, that doesn't look fun." And he goes, "This is the side that you never see. This is the side where Satan never lets you see. You're gonna become that." And I bet you $1 million, not like me, myself, and none of you guys were to ever look at the worst place that you were at. You never thought, when I grow up, I'm gonna be addicted to crack. I'm going to be an alcoholic. You never think that. You have high dreams for yourself, but eventually your choices get you where you're at, So fast forward. So we had that church going on. My dad had a heart for that, and there were a couple of times where we wouldn't see them for a couple of weeks. So there were times that I would go and we'd look in the neighborhood for the guys and just make sure that everything was cool. And there was a time where we went to one of the guys' houses, and he was gone for a week. We hadn't seen him. No one in the neighborhood had seen him. And we went to his front door, and everything was locked up, but he had this little window that was open. So my dad's like, "Go jump in the window." So I jump in his window, and he was dead on the ground with a needle in his arm. And it probably was 3 days that he was dead. And that's the kind of stuff, and my dad would just cry, but that's the kind of heart that God has for his people. He doesn't see them as well, that sucks for you. You shouldn't have been doing that. No, he has a heart for you because he has a plan for your life, But that guy never thought he was gonna end up like that. But that stayed in my head. So anyways, long story short, my parents ended up divorcing. I ended up moving up here, and I went to this high school, actually. And I was serving the Lord. I did not do worship at the time. I didn't sing. I didn't do anything like that. I just, went to church and all that. But later on, when I got a little bit older, actually was right out of high school, I started dating a guy who was like a partier and stuff. And I hadn't drank before. I kind of stayed away from everything because of what I just told you. I saw a lot of psycho stuff. So I kind of stayed away from that. So this guy, he drank a lot and all this stuff. So I started to kind of be like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. So I would start drinking with him and smoking weed with him and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, it became like a race because he was I was younger than him. So he drank a lot. So then I would be like, well, forget that. I don't want to be the designated driver. So I'd start drinking all these shots so I wouldn't have to drive. And it was so stupid. And then he would be drunk too. And so I'd be like, well, I guess we're not, like just fighting about who's like, well, I'm drunk too. And so it was so stupid. And so anyways, that didn't really, we fought a lot. So then I met another guy and I started dating him too. This went on for 5 years. I had 2 boyfriends at the same time for 5 years. And one guy, sorry, Mom. One guy partied a lot, the one guy I just told you about, and the other one was really chill. And so it's like they were the perfect blend together, but they were 2 different people. So I know. So I would, my drinking got really bad, every day. I would drink every single day. I'm a hairstylist, so we would all go out at night. I would lie about where I was to one of them and say I was with my other friend, and there was an accomplice that was always saying, yeah, I'm with Danielle doing this. And it was like, nobody ever really knew what I was doing, and nobody really knew how much I drank. So even if I was by myself, I would just be drinking all the time, and I was a blackout drunk. So I would, we'd go places, and I started getting like more rowdy, and I started getting with this group of friends that they did a lot of cocaine and stuff. And we would just go out to clubs, we would go out to bars, and I would just, it's like the second the alcohol touched my lips, something came over me where I had to get belligerent and black out. And my friends, it got to the point where my friends were carrying me in my house like every night. They would have to watch me, make sure I wouldn't, pass out backwards and throw up. My friends would stick their fingers down my throat every day to make me throw up so that I wasn't as psycho. And when you would tell me no more alcohol, Danielle, I'm not lying to you, I would start roundhousing my friends, like roundhouse kicking my friends. I jumped out of a car on the 55 freeway because I was mad that we were leaving. But I would hear these stories the next day. I wouldn't know I was doing those things. I would be barefoot, like toe all bloody. I don't even like things, and fighting, just really rowdy. And I don't know. It's like I didn't want anyone to tell me anything. And if you try to tell me anything about God, I'd be like, finish your verse, because I was raised in the church. So I would be like, oh yeah, that's in Hebrews 12. Like I would know it, but I wasn't practicing it, And so on and on, this went on for like 6 years. And there were nights where I would drink all night, and then I had to go to work in the morning, and I would be in the same outfit as I was the day before. And my clients wouldn't know. I'm not gonna call up my friends and be like, last night I got so drunk, I would wake up in other guys' beds. I already have 2 boyfriends as it is. And I would wake up in somebody else's bed. I would wake up, like, my friends would find me and I would do like disappearing acts. I would just probably in my mind, like, I'm over this night, I'm just gonna go home and stuff like that. So I would just like take off, and my friends would find me in like passed out places, like behind like trash cans and stuff. My brother found me one time. I was just asleep, just passed out. I was the bushes. I would always do like pass on the bushes, like the Wicked Witch of the West, and my shoes were out, and that's how they find me. It's like, but it's just like, that's not the plan that God has for you, And I make fun of myself now for it, but it became where that was the boss of me. I would wake up and I would be so hungover. Oh, well, to cure a hangover, you have to drink more, right? That's what they say. So I would start drinking. It'd be like 9 a.m. And the second I get off work, I have a headache. My clients annoyed me. I'm so tired. I'm gonna have another drink. And that's all it was. And it owned me. It was my boss. It told me what to do, when to do it, all the time. And I never felt bad for cheating on both those guys because I was never clear in my mind. I never felt bad about lying to my friends. My family had no idea the way I was living my life. Why was I gonna call them and be like, yeah, last night I was so wasted and my brother Paul found me in the trash? Why would I say that? Like, that's embarrassing. But they would tell me the next day and I'd be like, oh, well. And it's just like cloudiness constantly. So I started getting deeper and deeper and deeper into this lifestyle. And I got into just like hanging out with like chicks and stuff, and I would be like hooking up with girls too. Just things that I wasn't raised that way. But when you have a cloudy mind, you aren't thinking straight. You just think, well, why not? Like, I'll try it, I'm curious, or just things like that, So one night I didn't go out with my friends. I don't know why. I think maybe I was tired or something, and I was fighting with those two guys all the time too. And so this one night, I stayed home, and my dad and I were living together at this time. I had an old roommate before, and she went to jail, but that's a whole other story. So I wake up in the middle, or I go to bed this night, and it was actually pretty early for me. And I woke up to use the restroom, and I go to the bathroom, and I come back to bed. And a lot of nights, my dad would check on me because I told you, like, I'd be most of the nights like carried in from my friends and stuff because I was drunk. So my dad would come in often just to make sure I was still breathing and like not, passed out, like stuff like that. So I was laying there, and my dad came in my room and sat down on my bed, and I was like, oh, like, hey, Dad, and he didn't say anything. And so I sat up, and nobody was there. But when you're like sitting down, and like your feet are like out, and someone like sits next to you, your feet like sink in where the where the weight's at. So my feet, both of them were sideways, like sunken in because something was sitting on my bed, but nothing was there. I'm like looking at it. So I was like, oh my gosh, So like my heart started racing. And so like I laid down backwards, like really slow. And right when I hit the pillow, something jumped on my chest and shook me. And I was just going like this, and my bed was hitting the wall, like it's against this back wall, like the movies. And I don't even watch those scary movies. I've seen a preview, and I'm a chicken. And it was slamming on the wall, just going boom, 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 boom. And I was like, like that. And I couldn't move. I was just laying like this, and I was looking straight up, and I couldn't see anything but just black. And it was like hissing. It was going like that. And I don't know how long it was, but it felt like forever. And then finally it jumped off me. And I was screaming. And I'm surprised that the cops didn't come in to bust my door down because I was screaming my head off. So I ran to my dad's room, and I'm like, Dad. And I told him I knew it was a demon. I'm like, the way I was living, I just told you, and I'm not trying to get into too much of the details because that's not the point I'm trying to make. But I knew what kind of life I was living. I knew what kind of people and what kind of drugs I was starting to get into, and I knew better. So of course, it's like you think you can just do whatever you want, and you think you're going to flee from certain things. And I know a lot of you guys, if you've experienced going, drinking a lot or whatever types of drugs, you may have seen things like that in the middle of the night. Like that stuff comes with the territory, and it's not a joke. That stuff it really happens. If it hasn't happened to you, I don't hope that it does, but this kind of stuff, it's hard to explain unless you've had it happen to you. So anyways, I'm screaming at my dad, and I'm like, Dad, there was a demon, it jumped on me and all this stuff. And I was like shaking really, really bad. And he is just like he wasn't walking with God at that time either, so he wasn't gonna like preach at me. But he told me, he's just like, Danielle, you need to get your life right with God because you're messing around, and you need to, you knew what you need to do. And so I was just like, man. And so like 6 years, I was tired. I was tired of telling my friends, oh, I went with so-and-so this place. And I was tired of if I spent the night with one guy having my phone underneath the mattress because the other one's calling me. It was such a life, like I was lying to everybody. I would say I was somewhere, but I wasn't there. I wouldn't remember what I was saying because I was constantly foggy. It was a life that there was no peace no matter where I went, no matter what I did. And I was like fake and pretend, Even my closest friends didn't really know, like anything. So I just went in my room, and I was like, my dad's like, well, why don't you go back to sleep? I'm like, yeah, right. Like he's gonna come back and get me. So I didn't know. So I had every light in the house on. All of them were on. And I was like, I found this, I had a big old Bible that my grandma got me. It was the Spanish-English Bible. It was like that fat, like an encyclopedia. And it was under my bed. And I remember I had used that when I came to this school. And I was like, oh man, I'm gonna, and I was bawling my eyes out. But I got that big old Bible out, and I opened it up, and it was Psalm 91, and that psalm is so powerful, and it talks about the things that stalk in the darkness. There may be 10,000 at your right hand and 1,000 on your left, but God is the one who, because you delight in me, I will help you. I will put you on, over those things. And I totally butchered it up, but Psalm 91 is amazing, and it spoke to me, and I was like, that psalm is for me right now. Those things that are stalking in the darkness, it's because I'm not walking under the shelter of the Almighty. I've turned my back on God because I thought I knew everything, And that's a lot of things at the age of 18 through 24, living that way. You think, in your 20s, you think you know everything, and your parents don't know anything. And I was one of those people too. So I'm reading the psalm, and I just started crying, and I was just like, Lord, forgive me. And I just fell on my knees, and I was like, God, I'm so tired. I was so tired. I was so tired of being fake. I was so tired of being hungover. I was so tired of not remembering stuff. I was so tired of not getting any sleep. I was tired of just living like a psychopath and having no fulfillment. And the love that I really craved was God's love. It's like I have these two guys, and I couldn't find fulfillment in two people. But that's not the love that I was looking for. It was a love of a creator that designed me, designed my mind, designed my heart. I was looking for a love that was like that. But I didn't realize it because I was so busy being foggy and choosing people and choosing substances and a lifestyle that got me to where I was on my knees, choked out by a demon in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. So I just said, Lord, forgive me of my sins and come into my life. And I want to walk away from this. I don't want to be this way anymore. I'm tired. And so I said that prayer, and then I went to work that day. I didn't go back to sleep, and I had a couple of my friends, they're here today, but they were like, you should come over. I called them and told them what happened, and I didn't call my two boyfriends. I was like, I'll deal with that later, but I went to work, and I didn't tell anybody, and I looked haggard because I didn't sleep, So I went over to their house. They were like, you need to clean out your house. I had all kinds of sketchy stuff in my house. They prayed for me, and they were like, you need to get plugged into a church, and you need to be around people that are living their life for the Lord, because you can make a change for yourself and say a declaration and say, I'm going to be this way, and yet you still hang out with the same people and the same thing. It's like that demon that used to have you like this, like that addiction or that thing, that pornography, that the alcohol, the heroin, whatever, if it had you for a time, don't go back to it. You struggled with it before. Don't go and hang out with those people that are doing that. You need to flee from that stuff. So I was like, okay. And I was the ringleader of all my friends. I was the worst. I would always be like, whatever. The worst, egging on. That kind of a person, annoying person. So I was like, okay, I got to get my life right. So finally, maybe 2 days later, I had plans with one of the boyfriends. We were going to go to some barbecue. So he was going to come over to my house. And so I was in my living room, and I was waiting for him to come over, and I was going to break up with him. And I heard, it was like loud and clear in my mind. And it was the Lord, and he spoke to me. He said, he's not to step foot in your house. And so I'm not crazy. I know what I heard. And so I was like, oh my goodness. So he came over, and he didn't step in my house. And I just said, hey, it's over. I can't be with you anymore. And he was just totally he didn't understand. I didn't tell him what happened. I didn't want to tell anybody, any of my friends, what happened to me. I wanted them to see the change I was going to make. I just didn't want to talk about it. I wanted to actually do it. So I broke up with him, and then I actually called the other one and told him the same thing. So then I ended up changing my phone number later on too. But, it wasn't like, oh, I'm a Christian now and everything was fine. No, that life, all my friends would still call me, hey, come out, let's go do this, let's go do that. And I'd be like, oh, I'm tired, or, oh no, I worked late. And so you say no. And finally, after a while, your friends stop calling you, because you're a flake. They say she's a flake and all that. It's like, they're not even happy for you that you're staying in and acting like a proper person. But they're like, oh, you're a fake now, or you're a flake, whatever. So all my friends dipped out on me quick. And I was like, wow, So I had my two friends that, prayed for me that one night. And so I had been going to church. I found a church in Costa Mesa. I didn't come straight here. I went to church in Costa Mesa. And then I started reading my Bible a lot. And I would read seriously for 6 hours a day. There was nothing else to do. I couldn't go out. I was everywhere I went, they'd be like, well, where have you been? I couldn't go anywhere. I didn't have any other friends except all those party friends for 6 years. Of course, I didn't know what to do at that time. So I'd be like, well, this is all I knew. And that's all that I knew at the time, is that I know God spoke to me, and I know that God was real, and I needed him to change me. So I would read my Bible, and God would start speaking to me, and I'd be crying in my room. My dad would walk by, and he'd be like, what is going on? Are you depressed? What's going on with you? And I'd be like crying because God would just be talking to my heart and telling me, encouraging me that I have plans for you, Danielle. And God makes plans for you and he lays them out, but we're the ones that go like this and we walk like this way. But God doesn't take his hand off you. He walks with you because the Holy Spirit, he's with you, he's in you, and he's upon you. So even when I was acting like girls gone wild, God was upon my life, and he allowed me to go through those things, and it created a character in me that I didn't realize at that time. But now God, now that I'm saved, I can look at girls that are in that lifestyle that just want that constant like gratification, those men and feel loved and all that. And I can look at them with compassion and not look at them and be like, what an idiot. Why would you even do that? Because that was me. That was the little girl and it's like I had a flashback when I was reading my Bible one time, and I had a flashback of that day I told you guys about when I saw the guy going through the withdrawals. I never thought I was gonna end up the way I was, and I did. I promised that I was never gonna be like that guy, and I was. And you can always look to the left and you can look to the right and say, well, Susan does such and such. Well, Stacy does this and that. Well, whoever does this, I'm not as bad as her. I'm not as bad as him. But the example is Jesus Christ, and you have to look up. Or else you constantly will stay on that road, and you're wondering why your marriage is falling apart. You're wondering why your kids don't want to have you around. You're wondering why, your friends don't want to be around you. But you can compare. I can compare myself to my band members. I can compare myself to anybody. But the perfect example is Jesus Christ. So I would just read and read and read. So about like 6 months down the road, there, in Matthew chapter 7, there's that story about the wise and the foolish builder, and it's the most popular story. And every single day for 6 months, Jesus would bring me to that story. And the wise man built his house on the rock, and the storms came and it stayed. But the foolish man built the house on the sand, and the waves came and the storms came and it washed it away. And I'd be like, okay, Lord, I got the story down. So then one day, I was reading, and of course I went back there, and the Lord just spoke to me, and he's just like, Danielle, you're on sand, but where I'm gonna take you, you're gonna need to be on the rock because you're gonna point others to me. And I remember that, and I was like 24 at the time. And so I was like, okay. So then I got a bright idea. I'm gonna start a Bible study. I didn't know anything. And I just told you, all my friends knew I was a psycho. So when I was like, hey guys, I've been sober for 6 months. Let's start a Bible study. And they were like, yeah, let's do it, And so there were some girls that were at the church that I was at. They started coming. There was like 5 of us. And I had only read the book of Matthew. So I was like, we're gonna teach Matthew. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I would read and I'd be like, expound on it. And I'd be like, yeah, so the Pharisees, that's crazy, huh? Like I wouldn't know what to say, but I knew that I had like a desire to teach and to break things down and to point people to Jesus and show people Jesus, his character, and how he was with people. And why were the people drawn to him? If Jesus was perfect and we're so not perfect, like why did everyone want to be around him? Like I wanted to show off Jesus to people, Even though I didn't know what I was doing, God still used it. So actually my Bible study is still going on now. It's been 5 years. It's actually out there. It's called Doorkeepers. That's what the love you crave. That's the love I was craving. A lot of love that a lot of people are craving is Christ's love. But the Bible study grew, and we moved it to my hair salon, and we were there for a while. And through that, just every single day, we meet every Monday and stuff, and we started having those studies. And then about a year and a half ago, the Lord put it on my heart to go, and there's a school of worship that's here on this campus. And I've never touched the guitar in my life. I sing in the car, and that'd be it. And there were 3 nights in a row that there's this old school jam that my parents used to listen to, and it's a worship song. It says, I'm coming back to the heart of worship. It's all about you, right? That's the jam. And I heard that song 3 nights in a row, just like the time, like with the wise and foolish builder, like over and over. Like, because I'm really stubborn, that's how God has to talk to me. He's like over and over and over and over. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. So... It's so, yeah. So I heard the song over and over 3 different nights. And I was like, what is that, And then he just put on my heart, like, I'm bringing you back to worship. Because when I was a little kid, I forgot to tell you that part. I would sing at my dad's church. I was like 8. It's like, you would sing like the Crystal Lewis songs and stuff, but it was like karaoke style. But I didn't like have a proper like instrument or anything. But then I didn't do worship at all again. So I was like, okay, well, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll go. So I started going to this school of worship, and everybody around me played like amazing. They were all pretty much worship leaders, equipping them for worship and bringing, praise to the churches, encouragement to the churches. So I went through that, and it's been 1.5 years, and God put this band together, and I'm still the worst player in the band, and I mess up a lot, but God is using me. And through this Bible study there were times there were 2 of us. And there would be people sometimes that would say, Danielle, don't you get bummed out? There's like 2 people at your Bible study. And I'd be like, well, yeah, I get bummed out at times. But I had promised the Lord, I'm like, Lord, I'm going to teach this Bible study because I know that I have a passion and I want people to know who you are. And I have a heart for people that have those struggles, those kind of girls that have addictions, girls that and guys, but people that think that God is done with them and then there's no hope for them. I have a heart for that. And I know that God allowed me as a little girl to see all that I saw when I was young. And he brought me back full circle. And now through this Bible study, we go to U-Turn for Christ. We go to the one in Lake Paris. We go there once a month, and we teach Bible studies there to the girls. We also go to the jail in LA. We're there once a month, and we teach a Bible study to them because you know what? Christ died for them too. And yes, they did crimes, but they're paying their consequences for their choices, but God still has a plan for their life. And they need to be encouraged and not put down because God loves them. And they need to know that there is a hope. And it's not going to just a counseling session. It's not just going to a meeting. It's you need to surrender your life and give it to Jesus Christ. So through the Bible study, Doorkeepers, God is bringing all of these people that remind me of how I was without him. And it's been so powerful to hear the stories of what God's doing in all these people now. And so here we are. This is actually my first time sharing my testimony. I'm normally I teach my Bible study, but God has a plan and a purpose for your guys' life. And no matter how far you've come from the way that you were raised, or you used to maybe go to church, or you used to talk to God, there's a story that I want to leave you guys with. And I taught it actually last Sunday at the jail. In the Old Testament, in 2 Kings, Elijah was there, and he was actually raising up some young guys to do ministering work. So they had outgrown where they were serving at. So they went out, and they all had axes, and they were chopping down because they were going to make a bigger place for them to study. And one of the guys, while he was chopping, the axe head flew off. Some of you guys know the story. It flew off, and it landed in the water. And he came up to Elijah, and he was like, hey, I lost my axe head. Like, what do I do? And so Elijah brought him back, and he's just like, where did you leave it? Where did you lose it? He said, where did you lose it? And he said, right there. And so the man of God tells him, well, reach down and pick it back up. And I'm saying this because it's a picture of the New Testament where the Lord says, you've left your first love. You haven't lost it. You need to return to your first love, who is Jesus Christ, and pick it back up. Pick him back up. What were you doing when you were serving in ministry? Like that guy who was chopping, he was ministering. He wanted to expound the ministry. He was doing the work of God. And slowly, the axe head doesn't just fly off. It started to get, floppy. Things started to happen. So things in our lives we allow and we compromise. We set up tables that look pretty, and we're like, oh, we put compromises. Well, it's not as bad as her. Well, I'm not doing what he's doing. And you start compromising and setting things up, and all of a sudden the axe head's lost, and you feel like you've lost God, but you left him. And God says to you today, go back to the place where you left him. Where'd you leave him at? What were you doing before you left him? I was going to church. I was reading my Bible. I was reading devotions. I was singing worship in my car. Go back to that first place, because you haven't lost your first love, but you left it. But he's here today, and he's alive, and he's real, and he wants to repair your life. God says, he whom the Son of Man sets free is free indeed. He told that guy at the pool of Bethesda to pick up your mat and walk. He told him to pick the mat up because it means you're not going to return to it. Do not make provision for failure because God never fails. So God has a plan for your life, and I wanted to just share my story of how God took a little girl like me who was a psycho, alcoholic, 2 boyfriends, stealing boyfriends, everybody's boyfriend, lying, manipulative, know-it-all, and broke me down and reshaped me, and he put me back on the rock. And I'm so thankful for that. So I want to leave you guys with this. We're back at the booth, at the doorkeeper's booth. It comes from Proverbs. Psalm 84:10. It says, "I'd rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tent of evildoers." A doorkeeper is a person that just simply opens the door up for you guys to go into the presence of the Lord. We're nobody. But I want to be a doorkeeper in the house of my God and allow people to know who he is because I know what he's done in my life. So we're back there at the booth. If you guys want to come and visit us, we'd love to talk to you. But I love you guys.